Go. So, as you are aware, we have just finished the history of communication. And quickly just going over those four periods that you guys were required to read. I want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of the time and its influence and how it will impact us today. So, in the classical period, we learned about rhetoric and dialectic type of language. Aristotle, Plato's, and Socrates were huge philosophers of this time. We still know them today, right? And for Aristotle, he was all about rhetoric. He was saying, like, we could use bombastic language, like very creative words to motivate and to influence. And he was the big guy who believed in ethos, logos, and pathos, okay? Now, Plato and Socrates, they were about dialectic type of language, which is kind of like debating or a courtroom situation where they wanted to resolve a conflict using truth based on both sides' argument. So it was all about absolute truth and knowledge, whereas rhetoric is more about how you can influence with the words you say, even if maybe what you're saying is not the truth. Okay? Sound good?
Sounds great.
Thanks, Andres. All right, so medieval period, however, this was a time of a lot of intellectual loss. People didn't know how to read, people were struggling to survive at this time. And so they didn't really have a great form of communication. And so rhetoric became aligned with the preaching of the church. St. Augustine was a religious man who believed that hey, I can use this to my advantage. I have learned the classical style of language, and I can learn the knowledge of the Bible, and I can teach others about it. So his big thing was you need to be knowledgeable in what you're talking about, and in his case, the church philosophies, and you needed to know how to reach out to the people. He was a missionary, and he was using this skill to influence people to join his church. Then we had the Renaissance period. They did a revival of the classical culture, but then also a movement to intellectualism. So for the Renaissance period, they were all about rhetoric and dialectic language, but also they chose to move away from the push of religion and to have more secular knowledge. Philosopher Bacon, his big thing was reason and morality was the way you became a great speaker. Ethics, truth, and morality was an integral place in communication. Whereas Ramus, he was like, you know what? Being a good man had nothing to do with being a good speaker. You can research and know your stuff and know how to articulate yourself well. It doesn't mean you have to be a good guy. And so his argument was like, it doesn't matter who the person is, it's what he's done to present his argument. So Renaissance period really brought about different perspectives. And then we went into the Enlightenment period. Philosophers Golden, Berquist, and Coleman, they talked about four distinct styles of communication at this time. Neoclassicism was just a revival of the classical period, but in a more modern approach. Now, the eclectic method used the artistic style. That was called the belletristic style. But basically, you would use oratory, drama, poetry, anything artistic to express yourself in communication. Epistemology was back to that dialectic method, which is more research, scientific, and moral reasoning. And then there was also a group of people that was more of a locutionary approach, which goes back to rhetoric, using that bombastic language. Again, that's really flowery words, being persuasive in how you say things to engage your audience. So, and the Enlightenment period was a big bridge between the past and in the present communication study. So, the importance of learning from past communicators, just like in any type of history, is learning and growing from their mistakes, from their experiences, and become better in our modern day. And in this case, becoming better communicators. So, in the past, they analyzed based on what was happening in their time, and we'll be doing the same here in the modern day. And this is a perfect segue into the next module you'll be doing, which is the communication theory. Okay. So this is one of the most important of the modules for this class because what you do in this module will help you in the rest of the semester developing your project. Okay. So it's important that everybody thoroughly reads this chapter, understand it, and do the upcoming assignments with a lot of effort. Okay. So communication theory is the way we see the world, and we try to find patterns. We try to find maybe a generalization of how people are the way they are, why they act the way they do, to help us better understand the world around us. So, we are going to become our own philosophers, our own theorists, and we're going to create our own communication theory. So, what is a theory? Let's start there. So, in your book, it talks about four theorists who had their own definition. Hoover says it's a set of interrelated propositions that suggest why events occur in the matter that they do. So, he's saying events happen a certain way because of how we behave. Now, Foss, and Griffin said it's a way of framing an experience or event, an effort to understand and account for something and the way it functions in the world. So you're looking at a specific instance in life, an experience or an event, they say, and you try to understand why did this happen in this situation, and how can that help me better understand the functions of the world in general. So you are going to be developing your own communication theory from your observations in the world. Now, in communication, it is more of like a pseudoscience. It's not going to always be the same, but we will find patterns. Whereas in scientific studies, your goal is to find a result that will always be the same. If I throw my pencil up in the air, it's going to fall. Gravity's law tells us that. But if I throw my pencil at my husband, it could have different reactions, right? Maybe the first time I throw it at him, he's confused. The second time I throw it at him, he is maybe laughing it off. But by the third or fourth time, he's probably irritated, right? So I might see a pattern, but it's still something I can't say it will always be this case. So you might say, well, why even study communication theories if it's not an absolute like scientific research? Well, there are functions of communication theories. Let's think about it. It can help us organize and understand communication experiences. It can help us determine what communication behaviors to study. So, what interests us and what would I like to learn more about? It can help broaden an understanding of human communication. How can I better communicate with this girl that I'm interested in? What are some things that I have learned and observed and become a better communicator? What can help predict and control how one communicates? So if you see flaws in the way you communicate, you address that and you become a better communicator. And finally, it can help challenge current social and cultural realities by providing new ways of thinking and living. So you recognize there's some flaws in the way we communicate in the world around us. Addressing that and becoming an advocate for change. Well, that's another reason why we become communication theorists. So let me apply an example. Um, in my graduate study, had to write a thesis paper, which was very stressful. I'm like, I don't know what to write about. What could I theorize, right? I'm the kind of person that I was like, just tell me what to do and then I can write it. Totally fine, right? But I was given the opportunity to create my own theory. And so I started by just thinking, like, what's something that I observed? What's something that bothers me? What is just something that's unique to me in my observations in the world? And for my study, I found, for example, I couldn't stand Katie Couric. Who's Katie Couric? Well, back in the day, Katie Couric was a big news anchor, and she was in Good Morning America back in the day, and then she became a hard journalist, and then she became the first nighttime news anchor. And I couldn't stand her, and I didn't know why. And I wanted to do a study on that. Like, why is this woman bothering me? Well, that helped me determine what I wanted to study, right? And help me analyze human communication behaviors on, for me, my reaction to her, but also maybe better understand why I personally couldn't stand her and why maybe other people couldn't as well. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Actually, I will stop. I'll do it right here. So let me just say this. I found in my study that when she became the nighttime news anchor, she was the first ever female, all right? And instead of positive critiques about her past experience, her credentials, I found more news stories and critiques from other reporters criticizing the way she dressed, the way she looked, and her family drama. So even though she was a professional, she was treated more as a woman. And subconsciously, I didn't realize it infected the way I perceived her. So my whole graduate study turned into analyzing how the news media frames female reporters and how it can influence us as an audience. And it all started with, I can't stand Katie Couric. Why? All right. So that's what's so amazing, that you could start with a simple observation and it grows into a communication theory. Okay, good pause there. How are we feeling so far?
Feeling pretty good so far.
I
Awesome.
feel good so far.
Good, good. Throughout this discussion, I want you guys to start thinking like, what is an observation I had? Because that's what I'm going to ask you at the end, just to share maybe some observations in the world around you that might inspire your future theory. Okay. All right. So, how do we develop a theory? Have you ever had any thoughts or observations about how things work in the world? Well, you probably have and you just didn't recognize it. Okay. So just start asking these important questions. Questions like, what are some things that you've seen time and time again? Some patterns you may have noticed. What's something that bothers you or intrigues you? What's something unique around that behaviors or the way people communicate or the way you communicate or a group situation communicates? But look for answers by observing communication behaviors. All right. So let me give you an example. For my undergraduate study, I was like, okay, what could I write a paper on? What could I study? Well, I made an observation. My then boyfriend at the time was a state champion heavyweight wrestler and a weightlifting champion. He was a big guy and really strong. And wherever we went, it never failed. It failed. It seemed like groups of men were aggressive toward him, groups specifically of white men. So, and for an example, we went to a restaurant and we were picking out some pizza. Hold on, I think I'm gonna sneeze. Nope. Okay. And I'm getting my plate of food. I turn to go to the table and I see a table of 4 or 5 white guys talking to each other. And you could tell they were like, I don't know, aggressive, something's happening, they're upset, and they're looking at a person behind me. So I turn around and there's my boyfriend minding his own business, doing nothing. He looks at me and he was like, what? And then he looks at that group, looks back at me and says, his nonverbal cues is like, yeah, that happens a lot. So I'm like, wait, what? Why are groups of guys acting aggressive to my honestly teddy bear boyfriend? Like he's a big guy, but he's the kindest person you'll ever meet, right? So now I'm looking for answers from my observation. Is he being aggressive toward them? Is he saying anything or being rude to anybody else in their observations? No, there's no cause for them to act that way. All right. So now I'm going to form answers and theories as a result of my observations. Why are they being aggressive toward my innocent boyfriend at the time? Any theories, Andres, or who's Triple M?
Oh, I'm Maddie.
Hi, Maddie. Any
Hi.
theories? Do you guys have any theories as to why that situation was happening? Just based on the story I told you.
I'm assuming because you said your boyfriend at the time was like sort of like a bigger guy, wrestling champ and such, maybe these guys felt almost like threatened in a way, not in like a way where he was like actively threatening them, but were almost like threatening their ego or their pride or something like that.
Okay, that's a good theory. Maddie?
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe they felt just like intimidated by him.
Yeah. Okay. So what did I do? Well, first off, I was like, okay, I wanted to study male aggression. Like, what caused them to be this way? And so the first thing I did is I started doing research. Other theorists had possibly done their own research on this very thing. And so I did. I found other studies that kind of explained why that situation may occur. But then I went a step further and I did my own study. So what I did is I developed focus groups. Okay. I had one focus group with a group of men that were all Native American. I had a focus group that were all African American, and I had a focus group that were all Caucasian. And then I had a fourth group where all three ethnicities were kind of combined. And I put them in a room with the camera. I wasn't there. There was no other woman. It was just these dudes talking, and I had a list of questions for them to have a discussion. In my observations, I found that there was a, a specific reason based on ethnicity that influenced their male aggression. Okay. So for Native Americans, their big thing was to protect their culture and their family. So if they felt that either of those were under attack, they would be aggressive. For the African Americans, the blacks, they said, and like they all kind of agreed that they were always there to back up their friend, their homie. So if they felt like their friends were being attacked, that they would back them up. And for the whites, now remember, when in my observations, I saw groups of men being aggressive, specifically to my husband, and they were always white guys. So this is where I was like, I need to know what this group has to say. And Andres, you nailed it. They admitted that when they saw somebody who was stronger looking, bigger, they wanted to know if they were to fight them, could they win? And that would make them that much better. This is exactly what they were saying in this group, unprompted by me. So I'm finding in my observations that these guys had an ego, and seeing someone bigger, stronger, brought about this aggression. And any guesses where the group of the blacks, whites, and natives were? What was their leading cause of aggression? They all agreed as a group of different ethnicity. Any guesses?
I'm actually not too sure on that one.
Right? Once I tell you, you're gonna go, duh. Maddie, any guesses?
I honestly don't know either what it would be.
If they felt like another man is trying to take their girl.
That makes more sense now.
Yep. So there you go. So there you go. So now let's ask, is this going to be the case for every white man? No, of course not, right? This is not science. This is pseudoscience. What we find though is a pattern, right? We're seeing a pattern and we're finding that oftentimes, not all times, this is occurring. So you might ask yourself, why study this type of research, this type of theory, if you're not going to always have that same solution, that same result, I should say? Well, you still can learn from these behaviors, from these patterns. To become a better theorist, though, you need to make sure you evaluate the value of the theory you're developing. Okay? So, I have this theory about male aggression. I need to make sure that I do the following to make sure it's the best theory that I can create. Okay. So, first thing, scope. Just like a telescope, right? You can have a broad view or a narrow view. If it's too broad, you're generalizing too much. So, I'm not saying all men have ego problems, right? I'm saying I have found in my studies that white men, particularly, are aggressive based on ego. All right. Is it absolute? No, but at least I'm being more narrow in my scope. Okay, number two, parsimony is to look for the simplest answer. Okay, so we made an observation of the situation, right, at the restaurant. Travis was not flirting with any girls. He was not being rude to a family member or anything else. He wasn't being derogatory in any way. He was literally getting a piece of pizza. So, based on my observations, the simplest solution answer was it was the group's mental state, not what he was doing, right? Next one is the heuristic value that prompts other studies from theorists. So I knew I wanted to understand why these guys were behaving the way they did. And so I went about and found research on male aggression because other studies have been done. Other theorists had other similar observations. And I based a lot of my research on what they had to say. Next one is openness. Make sure you have multiple options or multiple perceptions. So even though I was observing the white guys and their behaviors, I made sure to analyze different ethnicities so I could see that this was something that happened with this particular group. And it strengthened my theory because I wasn't being so close-minded and saying, I know this is it. I'm not going to study other different types of men. I know, even though I didn't really analyze any other guys, right? That's being way too close-minded. The next one is appropriateness. It is when your theory needs to work with the research you do. So I'm seeing these guys being aggressive. I want to understand this. My research should focus on male aggression. Now, maybe I do a study on self-defense, but does that apply to my theory? Does that make sense to what I'm analyzing? They're not, my husband or my boyfriend was not going up to them and attacking them. This was not self-defense behavior, right? So make sure it's appropriate research on your theory. And then lastly, validity is the worth of the theory. Did I do enough to make it as open and as neutral as I can? In my focus group, did I have enough people there? Did I have enough variety there? Did I ask the right questions? A, a credible theorist will always ask, am I doing everything I can to get the most correct answer and get the most information without being biased in what I'm studying? All right, so you will apply these steps when you're developing your own theory because you are going to become theorists yourself, and we want to make sure what you analyze, what you conclude is the best it could possibly be. So, for the two that showed up today, which you guys are awesome, the discussion question I have today is what ideas and or observations have you had that might inspire an original communication theory? Now, I'm putting you on the spot, and if you don't have anything, that's fine, but let's just start thinking of ideas because your discussion question for your first assignment is sharing an observation that could possibly be your research theory that you're going to create throughout this whole semester. Do any of you guys have just some ideas and we can help maybe build from that?
I think I have one sort of quick one. I haven't like put too much thought into it, but like the first thing that comes to mind is like in my experience with having like male friends and female friends, typically with the male friends, they tend to be more open and honest with like female friends rather than with male friends. Like, it just like takes more time, I guess you could say.
Okay, so just to clarify, you noticed in your observations that male to male friendships are a little bit more guarded, but male to female, they're more open.
Right, yeah.
Okay, do you have a theory as to why that might be the case?
Um, that I'm not like 100% sure.
Mhm.
Um, my immediate like thoughts would be that like male to male friendships are typically more guarded. Ah, yeah, I'm not really too sure, honestly.
Well, and that's okay. You are at a good part of the step because you made an observation. Now, Maddie may not have that same experience. Maddie may see it opposite. Now, Maddie, being a female, will probably recognize that female-female relationships are what. Oh, let's just say, Maddie, what do you think on Andre's observation? Is it similar to what you think, or what do you think?
With his observation, I would say I kind of agree with that. Just because I kind of have noticed that like some like my friends who are girls being friends with males, it does seem to be more open. But I would also say when it's like two like females together, it like kind of gives the same like I guess I've noticed it's kind of more like competition with one another. Like or like even within like groups, like it's a lot more competitive than if it was us with like more of like a group of men.
Okay, I'm loving this. So Maddie made an observation that she agrees that male female friendships are a lot more open, more maybe comfortable, whereas female to female, she's noticed a form of like a competition. Is that where you said, Maddie?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my question to you, Andres, do you think competition is one of the reasons why male to male friendships are a lot more guarded?
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that.
Okay, so now we're starting to get an idea. Does that mean it's going to always be the case? No, right? But that's a starting point. So now Andres is starting to develop a theory. He may not know it right now, but something to do with developing relationships based on gender, right? So that is a great starting point for you. So in your discussion board, just kind of throw around some ideas, and in the discussion board, your classmates can shoot off ideas, just like Madison did for you. Think about things that in your observation can help develop this theory. Okay? I love this. All right, Maddie, it's your turn. Any observations to share?
Kind of the first observation that came to my mind was like I've moved schools a lot, like pretty much since for me when I was in like sixth grade, every year I was at a new school. And like an observation I made was kind of like people don't want to like change like their friend groups. Like, especially because I was like new every year, I noticed like a lot of people just wanted to kind of stick to the friends they already made and didn't really want to like invite more people in or kind of lose people. So just
Mm-hmm.
kind of why people kind of like I don't know, like don't I don't know like how to phrase it, but, like aren't accepting to the change of the groups they already made.
So they like have these cliques that they've
Yeah,
developed. And a
yeah.
lot of these stemmed probably back in kindergarten.
Hmm.
So here are these kids have known each other. I'm a small town girl. I'm talking like there was 35 of us in the class, right? And so there was definite cliques, and to change from one group to the next was a lot. And having an outsider come, that was a challenge for them because they were an outsider, right? So you recognize from your own experience going to a school, it was hard to develop friends or get into a friends group because they were cemented to this group. Any
Yeah.
theories as to why that might be?
Um, I don't really know. I feel like the first thing that comes to my mind is just kind of like the fear of like change or what would happen if like you let someone in and it's not kind of what you expected. So it's like the fear of change.
Absolutely. I think fear of change is a big influence on the way people behave. Progress is scary for a lot of people. Absolutely. Andres, any opinions?
Yeah, I was actually essentially going to say the same thing, like that fear of change. They're kind of like aware of what's comfortable, and like any form of change, might seem a little scary because it'll make you uncomfortable, and you have to step outside that comfort zone in order to do so.
Yes. I'm going to add to this idea is another thing could be kind of protection. What I mean by that is Flagstaff. If you're not a Flagstaff resident, let me tell you, I've been here 10 years now. And it oftentimes there are people who have been in Flagstaff for years, but most of the people in Flagstaff come and go, right? Because you guys are students, you stay for a while, or people move here and realize they can't afford to live here, so they leave. And so people who move here initially, they say a lot of people originally from Flagstaff aren't very friendly. They're not very receptive to getting to know the neighbors, aren't getting to know us. Why? Well, I said, well, maybe it's because they think you're going to be gone in a year. It's a sense of protection, right? It's like, why get to know you? You're only going to last a couple of years and then you're gone. Hello, Lexus. Welcome to class. We were just talking about Maddie's idea about how people behave in a group. When somebody new comes into an environment like school, they're not as welcoming or receptive to a new outsider. Do you have a theory as to why that might be?
I I think it could be what you were talking about, how some people are just not here long enough to say, but I also think it's has to do something with some people are just not comfortable reaching out to other people because they just get too caught up in themselves and what they're going to say and how to start a conversation, I think.
I
So I
love
think
this.
that could be the main point too.
Lexus, I love that. What do you guys think of that? Maybe social limitations. What do you think? I think that's a good observation. Maddie, go ahead.
I was gonna say I do agree with that. Like I feel like that's definitely a big part of it. Just because also like I think most people don't necessarily like they're not always like thinking about, oh, let's reach out to someone new. Like they just
Hmm.
kind of are like, oh, my friends are here, so I'll just stick with them. So I do definitely agree that that would probably be a big part of it.
Love it. Awesome. All right. So now you guys have a better understanding of what this process is. It's a step-by-step thing. The first thing you just need to do is start thinking about what's something you've noticed. So Andres, Maddie, great examples. Lexus, would you like to share with us an idea or an observation that you've made that maybe you can develop a theory based on it?
Um, I would, I feel like yesterday was probably something that I recognized for myself because there we had a work event and there was hundreds of people, and I did not go out of my way to talk to anybody that I did not work with or that I did not talk to like at work. We had like a bunch of people that used to work with us that we were there, and they were like, "Oh, look at so and so's here," and I'm just like, "Okay, you can go say hi," and I'll like stand from here from the back and like wave. So I think also
Okay.
it's just that like not seeing anybody for a really long time, you're just like, well,
I
not
love
very
this.
interested. I don't know, not necessarily not interested, but just like kind of like whatever.
So there's like a disconnect, even though maybe you were colleagues at work at one point, maybe even friends, but there's been a certain amount of time between your interactions that there's not commonality between you two anymore. So let's theorize this. So I'm visualizing you're at a social event and you know the host, okay, and you know maybe one person other person and you made them come with you. All right, so you know the host and you know the person you came with, right? So why aren't you willing to get to know other people? What are some theories? Lexi, provided it's been
Definitely the I'm not gonna see them again, so it doesn't really matter.
so what's the point?
I'm
Yeah,
never
what's
gonna
the
talk
point?
to them again.
What else?
Um,
Andres? Maddie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Lexus's idea. I feel like this also kind of relates back to Maddie's idea where it's almost like that like sense of comfortability you have. If you're just kind of chilling, hanging out by yourself, it's a lot more comfortable than like stepping outside of your comfort zone to go talk to somebody that you may never see for a while or that you haven't seen in a while.
Okay, but let me counter argue this to you, Andre. So you brought
Mhm.
your one friend that you know and you're comfortable with, and you know the host, but the host is busy, right? The host doesn't have time to babysit you. So your friend
Correct.
needs to go to the restroom and you're there. Is it comfortable just to stand there or maybe interact with somebody?
Right, right. That's true actually. I because I feel like I have had moments like that specifically actually. And it it's weird because it almost feels like more uncomfortable to stand there just like by yourself and like,
Yes.
people may see you just like hanging out.
Like
Versus
dancing
like
by yourself?
actually yeah, versus like actually going to talk to somebody, which may seem more I guess like normal to the rest of the crowd.
Okay, so let me ask all three of you. So Andres recognized that at least it's a less awkward that you're not just standing there being a wallflower, at least you're interacting. Would you be more willing to come up to a person that's in a group visiting or come up to a person that's alone as well? What would be more comfortable?
For me, probably somebody that's also alone.
Okay. Maddie, what do you think?
Um, I would say probably like if I saw someone who like if I was alone and I saw someone who's also alone, then definitely like I would go up to the other person who's alone just because I feel like we're kind of in the same position at that time.
Alexis, you agree?
definitely agree. I think it also comes to the point in terms like I was raised that like if you go into a group setting, you need to say hello to everybody, and I don't have the social capabilities to do so because I'm just so anxious and overwhelmed. So it's just a lot easier for me to say hi to one other person rather than a whole group because I'm the type just who really listens and not really does the exchanging.
No, that makes sense. So we've already developed some theories as to why it would be easier to meet a new person one on one. you feel like there's a commonality between you two because you're both alone in this situation, right? And it's a lot more convenient slash less awkward, right? To introduce yourself one-on-one versus in a group setting. Any other theories?
Another theory possibly could be just the fact, like, if you're in a group setting, I think some people, I at least I know I do, if I go up and like interrupt a conversation or chime in, I feel like I am out of place.
Invasive.
There's some people that are like, hey, like, what did you just do?
Yeah. No, I love that. That's valid. So now you did this observation. You started out with the group setting, then we started talking about how maybe to break out of that awkwardness, and you recognize it'd be easier if it was one person. And these are the theories as to why that might be the case. You could build off of that, Lexus. So you could see you start something small and you build from there.
Hmm.
All right, good job, all three of you. So quickly, I just wanted to make sure you understand the upcoming assignment and answer any questions you may have. So your discussion prompt is going to be doing exactly what we did in class, developing a communication theory based on your observations. So share your observations, kind of create a theory, and this will be the baseline for your individual research project, okay? Go to modules, you'll get the detailed information, but you're going to create a theory and you're going to do research based on that theory. So at this point in time, it's still in the tentative stage, meaning it's possible that you might change it or grow from it, right? But by the 20th of this month, so in 9 days, you've got to have an absolute decision what you're going to study for your first step in the IRP. So right now, you're sharing your ideas just like we did in class, and you're going to post it on discussion board. And this will be due Friday before midnight. And then you'll come back and you'll give feedback, just like you guys did with each other, on things that maybe will help build on their theory. Share personal examples or quotes from the text or other sources to credit or discredit their theory. That will be due Monday before midnight, worth 5 points. Okay, so that's your discussion. For your writing assignment, you're going to develop your communication theory using the evaluation method we talked about. Think about scope, parsimony, heuristic value, openness, appropriateness, and validity to your theory that you're creating. Determine if your theory still stands strong or needs to be restructured, and if so, how. So this is going to make sure that your theory has a good starting point. Now, obviously, you haven't done the research yet, you haven't analyzed yet, so it's very baby stage right now. But just applying these steps will help you make sure you're going on the right path to research, okay? So that will be your writing assignment. And then as usual, you will just analyze today's chapter five's reading and your assignments and talk about what helped you improve your communication effectiveness based on this module. So if you haven't, please make sure you read through all of chapter 5 so you are prepared to write your own communication theory. Also, I told you guys a couple of times that you need to make sure you go to your discussion board. And who here has done that so yet? That was where you were supposed to go to your discussion board and share, just introduce yourself and share your thoughts on what you can offer to the group.
I believe I finished mine. I'm not entirely sure if it's, yeah, I just feel like it was just all right.
Okay, it's really informal. I just wanted to make sure you understand where you went. Okay, so you go to
Mhm.
group projects and modules, and you will find that you're in one of the groups. You're not going to see all four. I see all four because I'm the one in control of it, but you should have one of these groups. You go to the group, and you will know now this is where you'll go to communicate with your group that you've been assigned to work on your DTM. This is a discussion board. So you reply, and just like Angie and Eve did in their group, they made comments and shared like what days and times are best to meet, what they can offer to the group, whatever. Okay. So if you have not done that yet, Andres, Maddie, make sure you guys do that so that I know everyone is communicating and you're ready for those next steps. So that's separate from your research paper. This is your group project. Any questions about that? Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to leave the share. All right, you guys, I got to take my son to a dental appointment, but if any of you need to meet with me individually right now, I have a few minutes left. Does anyone as a group have a question that everyone can benefit? All right. Well, if you don't need to meet with me individually, please have a wonderful weekend. Get all your assignments done on time for credit, and I will see you next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, Andres.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing. So we have our group project, and then we have our paper that we both need to work on, and we need to have the subject for the paper for next week.
All right. So, first thing you need to do is think about your module today. Okay.
Okay.
So worry right now about module number 4. Okay.
Okay.
Can you see me scrolling down
Yes.
right now? Okay, cool. So you need to know, you need to do the discussion, the theory, and the assessment. Okay.
Okay.
Because those are all due Friday. So that's first priority. I want you to, if you haven't already, make sure you go to your discussion board and introduce yourself. Okay.
Mhm.
That's all that's due, and that's all you need to fret about right now. Okay.
Okay.
I was just reminding you that you do have 2 big projects, and the IRP one is your individual paper, and it will be based on the theory you're working on today. Okay. So really,
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
yeah, and you can come here and you'll see details about the IRP and details about the DTM. That's the group project.
Yeah,
But
no, I was
really,
looking
all
at
you
these
need,
and I was like, and
you're
I
like,
think it
too
just
much
made
is
me
too much.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, don't feel overwhelmed. I will be with you every step of the way. So right
Okay.
now, you're just doing exactly what you did. You made an observation, you're throwing out some ideas, and you're going to share it with the group. They're going to give you feedback, and then you're going to start analyzing it and preparing it for an actual research paper.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
not due. That's not due Friday. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, Lexus?
No, sounds good. Thank you. Have a good rest of your
Awesome.
day. See you next week.
Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Lexus?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm just making sure you didn't need anything else.